When you think of philosophers, you probably think of Plato, Aristotle, or Tyler Ninja Blevins. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Immanuel Kant and his views on that good life. For Kant, the highest good for human beings is attaining both complete virtue and happiness at the same time. For those of you more intellectually deprived, complete virtue is essentially getting 95 or higher on the Rice Purity test. Virtue by definition of Google is behavior showing high moral standards, which means not pulling the lever because overpopulation is a problem. If you don't understand that last reference, let me educate you. There is a runaway trolley barreling down the railway tracks. Ahead, on the tracks, there are 5 people tied up and unable to move. The trolley is headed straight for them. You are standing some distance off in the train yard next to a lever. If you pull this lever, the trolley will switch to a different set of tracks. However, you notice that there is one person on the side track. You have 2 options. Do nothing and allow the trolley to eliminate the 5 people on the main track, or hold the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will eliminate one person with the blood entirely on your hands. What is the right thing to do, or what is the most virtuous decision? For Kant, virtue is the strength possessed by an individual to resist bodily inclinations and do what is right simply because it is the right thing to do. In simpler words, resist want bad and do good because good is right. Being virtuous and happy have no necessary connection, and frequently doing what is right is the opposite of doing what makes us happy. Using the trolley problem, if you choose to help solve overpopulation, you kind of just eliminated 5 people. Unless you're a complete psychopath, you probably aren't too thrilled about that. And if you pull the lever, you consciously murdered a human soul. Of these 2 components of the highest good, Kant's focus is on what individuals must do to cultivate a virtuous character. The ability to exhibit virtue is exclusive to human beings. This is because human wills are affected but not determined by bodily desires. Thus, we come to the spectrum of decision making. On one end, we have the ordinary house cat. When it's tired, it sleeps, and when it's hungry, it eats. And on the other end, we have C-3PO, whose will is completely determined by logic and reason. In conclusion, humans are C-3PO cats. Kant claims that the objective of human reason is not to make us happy, but to help us be worthy of happiness, which heavily correlates with becoming virtuous. He closely associates morality, reason, and freedom. One necessary condition of morally praiseworthy action is that they are performed freely. Kant's view of freedom is a little bit different from the freedom we know today, like the freedom of speech, even though some people probably shouldn't have it. In Kant's eyes, someone is free if his own reason generated the principle from which that action was performed. This basically means that if an individual was motivated by a bodily desire like hunger or lust, or he was coerced or habituated into adopting certain principles, then his actions are not free and he could not be morally praiseworthy, even if he did the right thing. So let's take uncopyrighted powerful individual. He flies around saving people throughout his uncopyrighted New York-like city. If he does this to gain the approval and admiration from uncopyrighted female journalists, his heroic acts are not morally praiseworthy. But if uncopyrighted powerful individual stops something bad from happening just so it doesn't happen, then he is morally praiseworthy. If you want to be morally praiseworthy, you need to do more than just adopt the principles freely. They have to be the right principles, or ones that are consistent with the moral law. Kant connects the moral law directly with reason as well, and he argues that reason dictates that individuals should, quote, act only in accordance with the maxim which you can, at the same time, will that it can become a universal law. I don't know what was going through Kant's head when he wrote that, but what he's saying is, I actually don't know what he's saying, but this for Kant is the categorical imperative, an unconditional moral obligation which is binding in all circumstances and is not dependent on a person's inclination or purpose. To simplify further, the categorical imperative is kind of like a principle tester in a sense that principles are tested to see if they pass, are consistent with the demands of morality and can be acted on, or fail and should be discarded. Now, the challenge of this is once you develop those appropriate principles and done so with no external influence, you still have to act on them. Kant claims that this development of reason comes through education, and as a result, can occur only for an individual who is a member of a civil community. Now, there are a lot of different definitions of civil communities among different philosophers, but for the sake of simplicity, let's say this ideal society provides adequate safety, protection, and resources to allow the additional benefit of helping to secure the external conditions necessary for an individual to progress in their path to complete virtue. Simple stuff. These external conditions allow individuals to not have to possess the fear of sudden or violent death or starving. If this individual does not know where their next meal will come from, they lack the necessary degree of external freedom to be virtuous. Once this individual has developed the appropriate degree of reason from living in a civil community and to freely identify the right principles upon which they should act, the last step is actually acting upon those principles. Here, Kant introduces the concept of self-respect, arguing that the motivation to act appropriately must be internal, and claims that the greatest punishment for bad behavior is that an individual feels worthless and contemptible in their own eyes. It's kind of like that post-eating depression that you get when you eat a burrito because you're bored but not actually hungry. The virtuous person, therefore, possesses the strength and self-respect to not give in to bodily inclinations, adopting good principles of action freely and then acting upon those good principles. Now remember what I said at the beginning of the video. For Kant, the highest good for human beings is attaining both complete virtue and happiness at the same time. Virtue is only half of the highest good. The other half is happiness. Kant's religious writings reveal his beliefs on how an individual can hope to become both virtuous and happy, even though it may seem like the two conflict. He states that the only way to attain the highest good is if a higher power is able to guarantee the coexistence of virtue and happiness. If you buy Kant's beliefs in the unison of virtue and happiness, it is reasonable to have faith in the existence of a supreme creator. Whether or not we buy Kant's argument, his understanding of the highest good for human beings is connected to our nature of being both rational and sensible. Reason, which is developed by living in a civil society, allows us to both generate the moral law and determine which principles of action are consistent with it. The strength to set aside our desires and act on those principles comes from within. To have this fulfilling, virtuous, and happy life, you need freedom, willpower, faith, and to like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below who your favorite philosopher is.